Every day a child in poverty waits for a sponsor is another day of hopelessness. There are thousands of kids who've been waiting over a year. End their wait. Sponsor a child with compassion today. Just text the word radio to 83393.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
A monumental development for the WNBA. For the first time in the league's 27-year history, every team will have charter flights for all road games this season. In the previous 26 years, all teams were forced to travel on commercial flights. WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert said the use of private jets will help address concerns of travel fatigue for players and safety concerns when players had to walk through airports. The WNBA's 12 teams will play 40 regular season games, 20 on the road. The NBA will announce its Most Valuable Player Award today. The winner will be revealed on TNT's Inside the NBA pregame show. The three finalists are Luka Doncic of Dallas, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander of Oklahoma City, and Denver center Nikola Jokic. Clippers guard Russell Westbrook is a finalist for the NBA's Social Justice Champion Award. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Hi, it's Tavis Smiley. First, thank you for your support of KBLA Talk 1580. We deeply appreciate you. So, I get asked all the time, Tavis, when are you going to bring back that State of the Black Union symposium you used to do? You know the one where you had all those black intellectuals on stage every year and everybody watched all day live on C-SPAN? Yeah, I know the one. Let's bring them back. Well, I am pleased to tell you that if you go to KBLA1580.com right now, you can sign up to be in the audience here in Los Angeles when we go back live on C-SPAN with a stage full of black thinkers and influencers for a historic conversation. America has never seen a stage full of black folk talking about the urgency of now. Climate justice, climate equity, climate resilience. It's going down Tuesday, June 18th, 4 to 7 p.m. at the California Science Center in Exposition Park. Admission is free, but you must register at KBLA1580.com. Once we reach capacity, you'll have to watch us on C-SPAN. But if you want to be in the room when we go live from Los Angeles, Tuesday, June 18th, head to KBLA1580.com right now to reserve your seat. Caring about the climate, caring about the community. With KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Have a deep birthday.
I'm gonna try to keep it coming. Things ain't always smooth, but I'll be alright as long as I can find the groove. Yes, I will. Somehow I know that I can make it. You seem to like my style. Don't you worry, I'm gonna be around a while.
Live from historic Leimert Park in Los Angeles, California, I'm Tavis Smiley, and I'm so glad to see you and me back in stride again. Before we get started with today's show, let me invite you to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at The Real Tavis Smiley and get updates on X, that's formerly Twitter, at Tavis Smiley. By the way, should you miss any part of today's program or want to catch up on previous shows, you can always visit thetavisSmileyShow.com, that's thetavisSmileyShow.com, or wherever you get your podcast and listen to the Tavis Smiley podcast version of this live program at your leisure. Another great show on tap for you today. In our second hour, history professor Toure Reed is back with a deep dive into the current campus protest through the lens of the black protest tradition. That's hour two. In our third hour, two conversations. Up first, Derek Black was raised to take over the white nationalist movement in the U.S. His father was a former Grand Wizard in the KKK, and David Duke was a family friend. Derek joins us to discuss renouncing a community of hate and becoming an anti-racist. On the B side of hour three.
There's a man at my house, he's so big and strong. He goes to work each day and he stays all day long. He comes home each night looking tired and beat. He sits down at the dinner table and has a bite to eat. Never a frown, always a smile. When he says to me, how's my child? I say that I've been studying hard all day through, trying very hard to understand the golden rule. I think I'll color this man father. I think I'll color him love.
On the backside of hour three, a tribute to my beloved father, Emory G. Smiley Sr. Recently, I lost my dad, and he'd been sick for a spell, but suddenly took a turn for the worse and made his transition on April 22nd. I have stayed quiet about his passing for the last couple of weeks because I needed time to process losing my hero and how I would navigate the rest of my days without him. I returned to Indiana last weekend to bury my father, and today, on the B side of hour three, I want to tell you about my hero, Emory G. Smiley Sr. But in this first hour, two more conversations on the B side of this hour, author and psychotherapist Yamonte Cooper on his new book, Black Men and Racial Trauma, Impacts, Disparities, and Interventions. All that said, we commence today's show in conversation with Representative Andy Kim, Democrat of New Jersey, on his historic campaign to be the first Korean-American elected to the U.S. Senate. Kim is running for the seat currently occupied by Robert Menendez, whose federal corruption trial is on track to begin next week. Representative Kim, good to have you on this program. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me on the show.
It's good to have you on the program. Let me start with the obvious. This corruption case against Robert Menendez, we who follow politics have known that this is not the first time that Bob Menendez has run into trouble with the law, but this corruption case now set to get underway next week. And I guess my question is how this case is shaking the trust of voters around election season, not just in New Jersey, but indeed beyond, given the powerful role he has in the U.S. Senate.
You're absolutely right. I mean, it's part of that bigger challenge that we face in terms of the fragility of our democracy. I mean, right now, we live in the time of the greatest amount of distrust in government in modern American history. Mm-hmm. In New Jersey, in my state, 84% of people in New Jersey believe that their elected officials are corrupt. So, when this indictment of the senator came forward, it shakes the trust, but it also builds this apathy. And that's what I worry about. I've been saying a lot lately, I believe the opposite of democracy is apathy. And, when people feel like corruption is endemic and their elected officials are looking out for themselves and not the people, that's where I think we face this deep, substantive and potentially existential threat to our democracy. So it's very worrisome, both in terms of how it breeds that lack of trust, but also how it grows that apathy around the country.
How does one advance what I would call an experiment in democracy? I say all the time that we have a Madisonian framework for democracy, but we ain't quite there yet. That notwithstanding, how does one even advance the notion of this experiment in democracy when 84% of voters in your state believe that their leaders are corrupt? We'll let Andy Kim respond to that when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
You're listening to Tavis Smiley, ranked number 45 on the Heavy 100 list of the 100 most important radio talk show hosts in America.
Hey, y'all. Mona Swain here from Target's new YouTube series, My Cart is Full, where we feature Black founders and creators highlighting their connection to our community. As an actor and content creator, I love using my voice to inspire young Black women who look like me. When it comes to feeding my shine, seeing myself reflected in Black-owned and founded products at Target brings me joy. Together, we are Black Beyond Measure. Learn more at target.com/blackbeyondmeasure.
Cookie wants to be a professional wrestler.
I'm Cookie Serratos, and I'm 11 years old.
She also wants to win all the medals. That's why Cookie and her family make every day count, squeezing out her best with Go-Go Squeeze.
Okay, Cookie, let's break for a Go-Go Squeeze.
Go-Go Squeeze fruit-on-the-go pouches are a nutritious snack made from 100% fruit with no sugar added.
Go, Cookie!
Because when you nurture your kids, you squeeze out the best in them. Squeeze out the best with Go-Go Squeeze. Not a low-calorie food. Products range from 11 to 13 grams of sugar and 60 to 70 calories per serving.
What up, kinfolk? It's Slink Johnson here for Original Taco Beef, home of the tasty black taco. And this Mother's Day, Aaron and I would like to invite you to bring your mama to get a free taco. Come enjoy our delectable menu at 3272 West Slauson Avenue, right off Crenshaw near the K-Line. Catering and delivery is available through Grubhub, Uber Eats, or at originaltacobeef.com.
I spray and scrub, but the soap scum in my bathtub is still there.
I spray and scrub, but the burnt sauce on my stovetop sticks around.
Sprays can leave grime behind. The new Mr. Clean Ultra Foamy Magic Eraser combines the scrubbing power of an eraser with the cleaning power of Dawn to melt away tough messes on contact.
Just wet, squeeze, and erase.
Stop spraying, start erasing, and clean with more magic than ever with new Ultra Foamy Magic Eraser.
Mr. Clean, Mr. Clean. I'm going out with the girls this weekend. Nails done, outfit stunner, and my skin, I know it's going to be glowing because I glammed up my shower routine with new Olay Indulgent Moisture Body Wash. It smells so luxurious and moisturizes deep into my skin with its super rich, creamy lather that's bursting with vitamin D3. So my skin glows and my confidence grows. Try new Olay Indulgent Moisture Body Wash for glowing skin in just 14 days.
Hi, this is Quentin. A little thing I love about Chick-fil-A chicken strips are how satisfying they are. It's one of my favorite things on the menu, especially when you add in that Chick-fil-A sauce. Always a perfect combination. And then personally, you know me, I'm getting a 4 count. I want as much chicken as possible. I'm that guy. Whenever I get them, whether it be lunch or for dinner, in my household, it's always a winner.
Order the chicken strips on the Chick-fil-A app today. Real customer paid for their testimonial.
Who do you trust to get at the truth?
Tavis Smiley.
That's who. The conversation continues right now.
It does indeed with U.S. Representative Andy Kim, who may very well be the next senator from the state of New Jersey, the Garden State. In a moment, I want to ask him about a historic case, historic lawsuit that he brought against the state of New Jersey for the way it manipulates cynically, he would argue, its ballot system. It was really, really big news to have a candidate push up against a state's ballot system and win that fight. We'll talk about that in just a second. It has reverberations, I think, around the country for other states who are doing some pretty interesting and tricky and let's just call it janky stuff when it comes to how folk get on ballots and how that process is executed. But I want to come to the question I posed a moment ago, Representative Kim, and that is, in your state, that number is startling, I suspect, to many of our listeners, that 84% of voters in New Jersey believe their leaders are corrupt. How does one advance a democracy with that kind of data, that kind of number?
Yeah, it's concerning, and I was struck by something you said in the first segment. You talked about Madisonian democracy, and I think that gets at some of this about the disbursement of power within our society. And I think when I look at what happens with this deep distrust, two things in particular come to mind. One is that you have to show that there is accountability within our system. And that is something that is key. And that was a big reason why I stepped up to run for the Senate seat, a day after the indictment came out. The second point is you have to show, and we have to rebuild the sense that government is it's accessible to people, that it's something that is at their fingertips, and I think too much people feel so distant from their elected officials, too distant from democracy. But what I try to say is that, democracy doesn't just exist in D.C. It exists within our own communities. And, I've now done 75 town halls as a member of Congress, trying to engage and embolden people to understand what it means to be a citizen, not just on election day, but every day. And I think the more that we can try to empower that the better we'll be at. But we have to show that a reform agenda is powerful, that this is something that can move things. The most popular piece of legislation that I probably introduced right now is about, banning members of Congress from owning and trading individual stocks, for instance, trying to show that, we're trying to curtail the potential for insider trading, for abuses of power. That kind of message is important to send to the people.
And what kind of support are you getting on that bill in the House?
Well, I'll be honest with you. It has not necessarily made me the most popular person
I'm sure.
here at the Capitol.
Yeah.
But look, it's important. Yeah, I mean, I have some of my colleagues pushing back on me, saying, "Hey, look, are you accusing me? You're not trusting me." And I said, "Look, it's not about any individual cases, but you got to understand what the perception is of 330 million people." Towards the actions of 435 in the House and 100 in the Senate. We have to understand how people are perceiving government right now, because that has the ability to undermine it all.
Tell me more about your historic and, I might add, successful lawsuit against the state of New Jersey for how it does its ballot system.
Yeah, this is a really crazy development that I'm really excited about. It's just like, long story short, to people who don't understand this, New Jersey is just about the last remaining machine politics state in the country, and there's a system in place where party leaders are able to give preferential placement to their desired candidates on the ballot, actually, putting their thumb on the scale in that way and making it harder for others to even appear in a prominent place on the ballot. That is something that has long held back the ability for democracy in New Jersey to be participatory. When I first started to run for Congress 7 years ago, people said, I didn't have a shot because, I was not an insider. I wasn't part of the club. I'm a son of immigrants, a public school kid that didn't grow up in a political family. So, those are the types of things where I do think we need to engage. So I filed a lawsuit to be able to fix this broken ballot. And it was tough because I was literally going up against leaders of my own political party. But again, I think that that's what people need to see, is that our country isn't just broken into, two tribal factions, that we have to show that we stand up against, abuses that affect our value system, no matter who's doing it. And I'm glad that the federal court ruled in my favor, and now we're seeking the permanent fix to try to make sure that we have fair ballots going forward for all elections into the future.
I want to ask you in a moment, that is, about the current rhetoric around immigration, given your experience and that of your parents. Before I do that, though, just tell me how it is that a Korean American comes out of nowhere, essentially, and ends up being the heavy favorite in both the primary and the general in a place like New Jersey.
Yeah, look, first, it's about stepping up. I mean, when I first ran for House, I represent a district that is 85% white, less than 3% Asian, that voted for Trump. And you would not imagine that a Korean American Democrat would be the person that could do that. But this district has now 3 times elected me to be their voice. And I had people beforehand tell me, no way, you're wasting your time, don't bother trying. But I think it's important to show that, look, I have every bit as much right to represent that district as anybody else. I grew up there. I'm raised in a family there. And I don't want other people determining what I am or am not capable of accomplishing simply because of my last name and my heritage, my ethnicity. So, I think it's important that we show that, first, let's make sure that democracy is open, that we don't use, stereotypes and profiling to try to say, that Asian Americans, we can only represent Asian American heavy areas of this country, or other minorities in that way. And the other aspect of this is, I did not grow up in a political family. And, I think that the Korean American, the Asian American community is starting to come of age and understanding that, we cannot ignore politics, that we have to find a voice, and we have to find ourselves as part of a broader coalition. And, I think that there is hopefully a new era of Asian American participation in government that we're going to see over this next decade. And I hope to be able to shape that in a way where it can stand alongside other important communities, the Black community, the Hispanic community and others, and show that we're stronger together.
I want to ask you in a moment about Korean-Black relations. We know well, this audience knows well, that the other senator from the state of New Jersey is Cory Booker. And so there'd be an African-American and a Korean. It never has that happened in this country. We've never had a Korean-American, period. So we've never had a black and a Korean representing a particular state. That would be huge. And trust me, if this happens, and it looks like Andy Kim's going to pull this off, there'll be a lot of stories, a lot of articles about that and the changing demographic in this country, that a Korean and African-American represent a state, a powerful state, like New Jersey. We'll come to that in just a second. Let me just circle back right quick to the Bob Menendez piece. One other quick question that comes to mind about that. Speaking of you and Cory both being Democrats, what do you make of the Democratic Party, Democrats in the Senate not forcing out Bob Menendez? You decided to run the day after this indictment, but Democrats have been pretty quiet about this, haven't forced him out. And again, when you look at a country where so many of us believe that our politicians are corrupt, I thought at one point that the Democrats might step up and squeeze Bob Menendez because it doesn't look good for the party. Your thoughts?
I think that a large number of Democratic leaders, certainly in New Jersey as well as in the Senate and Congress, had called for Senator Menendez to step down. He has not, when it comes to people saying, well, maybe there should be an expulsion vote, I mean, that requires a high threshold. And right now, every single Republican is saying that they would not support expelling Menendez, that they've not done that. So I think it's important to show that, look, the Democratic Party, a lot of them have been stepping up, saying that, we need to have new leadership here, a change. And, what we've seen is the Republicans, whether it's the former President Donald Trump or this situation, with Menendez, not taking those actions. So, I hope people see the differences in how the parties are responding, and why it is that we think that accountability needs to be such a fundamental part of our democracy in order to be able to restore trust.
And obviously the Republicans don't want Menendez pushed out, because as long as he's there, if Democrats aren't going to do it, they aren't going to do it for them, because as long as he's there, they can argue, as they run this year, that the Democratic Party is corrupt. And so it's pretty clear why they don't want Menendez gone, but I'm just, again, a bit surprised on some level that Democrats didn't squeeze or haven't squeezed Bob Menendez harder. I digress on that. What are your views around or about the current rhetoric around immigration in this country?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think it kind of gets at what we were just talking about. It was saying, the Republicans don't want to, push out Menendez because it's a useful political tool and a weapon for them.
That's right.
And the same thing goes for immigration. I've worked alongside a lot of colleagues in Congress. Many of them yell the loudest about immigration, talking about the southern border. But when I actually try to engage with them in a conversation about what to do about it, they don't actually want to do anything about it because it is such a useful political weapon that allows them to get viral tweets and, get on cable news more and just, argue about it. We saw Donald Trump even say that, he didn't want, action to be able to try to address immigration prior to the November election because it would hurt him and his chances. So, for me, I am a son of immigrants, married to an immigrant. I'm someone who's worked in national security, and, I think we all can agree we want a more orderly system when it comes to immigration. But we have to be very careful with this. I was in Congress for the last 2 years of Trump's presidency. I don't want to see the Democratic Party adopting the rhetoric and the language of Donald Trump. Yes, we can be concerned and want to come up with tangible ways to be able to address these challenges that we face. But right now, Donald Trump and the Republicans are casting this huge, shadow over the entirety of immigration that's really trying to get at this fundamental question of what does that value actually mean to our nation at this point. So, yes, we can take some tangible steps to try to make a more orderly process, to try to address and have the federal funding we need to support our communities across the country that are dealing with surges of migrants and other issues. But we can do so in a way that still stands up for immigration in our country and not giving in to Donald Trump.
I had a recent guest on this program, Congressman Kim, talking about Korean-Black relations. The conversation was centered around the Rodney King beating now over 3 decades ago here in Los Angeles, where I sit. We all know the backstory. People recall that L.A. was set on fire, the uprisings jumped off after those 4 cops were acquitted, those LAPD officers, or 4 white cops, acquitted in the beating of Rodney King. But a year prior to that, a young girl named Latasha Harlins, a black girl, had been shot and killed in a convenience store here in L.A., South L.A., by a Korean store owner named Soon Ja-do. And so this book looks back over 30 years ago at what happened and what led up to that uprising. It wasn't just the beating of Rodney King. The city, black folk in particular, had it up to here. And she tied the uprising back to this killing of Latasha Harlins by this Korean store owner. We had a really robust conversation about Korean black relations then and where they are now 3 decades later. As I mentioned earlier, historically, you'd be sitting alongside Cory Booker. Cory would then become the senior senator from New Jersey. You'd be the junior senator. But for the first time in this country, we'd have an African-American and a Korean representing a particular state. Your thoughts then about the relationship or lack thereof between the Korean community and the black community?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, what I'll say with regards to if I am elected, with regards to me and Cory Booker, not only would it be that dynamic that you talk about in terms of a black senator and a Korean American senator, but we would be the only state in the country that would have 2 minority senators in the United States Senate as well. And I think that that's an important recognition as well in terms of how we move forward. But what you said is absolutely important. I was 10 years old when the LA riots happened, and I'm on the other side of the country, all the way in New Jersey. But the reverberations of that were so strong. It penetrated not just throughout LA and California, but all across this country, and it has played a central role in thinking through what does the relationship between the black community and the Korean American community mean in this nation. And it's something that has a lot that we gripped on. I mean, some of the most difficult and poignant photos from that time of storekeepers, Korean storekeepers with guns, and the broken buildings. It was really tough. I will say though that as we move forward, what I think about is what's happened over the last 30 years. And are we on a better trajectory? And I would hope that we are in terms of strengthening that. I mean, certainly we've seen a generational shift in the Korean American community. What we've seen right now is the median age of Korean Americans in America is at around 34, 35 years of age, which means that they would have been, babies when the LA riots happened. You have a lot more Korean Americans born in America, whereas, back in the 90s, a lot more were immigrants to the United States, especially in the LA area. And, I think that hopefully we're in a place where we see that kind of shift. I mean, I was looking through these numbers the other day. In 1992, the Asian American population in this country voted for George H.W. Bush by 55 points, in the year of the LA riots. And then in Obama's second term, the Asian American community voted 73% for Obama. So you see this shift politically. And I hope that that's something that we can build off of organizationally. I know in Congress now, the Asian American Caucus and the Congressional Black Caucus work hand in hand. The Asian American Caucus supported the Black Caucus when it comes to the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, and the Congressional Black Caucus. They were the first to come to the Asian American Caucus and say, what can we do when we saw a rise in anti-Asian hate during the pandemic? So, I'm hopeful that we can engage. And we have some really incredible new leaders, too, like my colleague, Congresswoman Marilyn Strickland, who is born to a Korean mom and a black father. Someone who can, really help us talk through this and engage. So, I'm hopeful that this is a new era of that, and it does not deny or reject or close a door on the challenges in the past, but builds on it and saying that we're stronger together. Let's not divide us. It is not zero-sum. Let's grow together.
We now live in the most multicultural, multiracial, multi-ethnic America ever. And it's about time that one of these states have 2 people of color representing it in the United States Senate. That state is likely to be New Jersey, and that person is likely to be U.S. Representative Andy Kim, who I've been honored to have on this program. Congressman, all the best on the rest of your campaign. I look forward to talking to you many times down the road, sir.
I really enjoyed this, and thank you, and my condolences to you for the loss of your father. I just wanted to say that before we end.
You were very kind. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
Seeking the truth, speaking the truth. This is the Tavis Smiley Show.
Paid for by government.com. Did you know the United States Mint has issued a new Morgan silver dollar coin in proof condition for the first time? Not only that, they are also minted in 99.9% pure silver for the first time ever in history. Coin experts are calling this an amazing opportunity for anyone that knows the enduring popularity of Morgans. But you must hurry. Only 400,000 of these legal tender silver dollars were issued. These first ever Morgan silver dollars are brand new with stunning mirror-like finish. Minted by the iconic San Francisco Mint. Call now and you're guaranteed a new first ever 99.9% pure silver proof Morgan dollar. To learn more, call 1-800-973-9717. If you order now, you will receive a free coin collector bonus pack, a $25 value, free with every order. Call 1-800-973-9717 now to secure your new Morgan silver dollars before they are gone. That's 1-800-973-9717.
Thank you for joining us, everyone. I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Donald Trump's hush money trial is in recess until Thursday after some salacious testimony from adult film star Stormy Daniels. Daniels took the stand Tuesday and went into detail about her alleged sexual encounter with Trump, leading the judge to scold the prosecution about her degree of detail. Trump is accused of falsifying business records tied to paying Daniels to stay quiet about an alleged affair just prior to the 2016 election. The state of Washington could see its first ever black governor. Ilona Kearney is the only female candidate in the race to become the next governor. She's running against Attorney General Bob Ferguson and State Senator Mark Mullet for the Democratic nomination. If elected, the Army veteran would be the state's third female governor. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Every day a child in poverty waits for a sponsor is another day of hopelessness. There are thousands of kids who've been waiting over a year. End their wait. Sponsor a child with compassion today. Just text the word radio to 83393.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
A monumental development for the WNBA. For the first time in the league's 27-year history, every team will have charter flights for all road games this season. In the previous 26 years, all teams were forced to travel on commercial flights. WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert said the use of private jets will help address concerns of travel fatigue for players and safety concerns when players had to walk through airports. The WNBA's 12 teams will play 40 regular season games, 20 on the road. The NBA will announce its Most Valuable Player Award today. The winner will be revealed on TNT's Alexander of Oklahoma City and Denver Center Nikola Jokic. Clippers guard Russell Westbrook is a finalist for the NBA's Social Justice Champion Award. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Right now, there are young people across the world facing a tough choice. Continue their dream of education or drop out to help their family put food on the table. You can help change their future in a single moment. See how far your support can go at unbound.org. We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focused and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focused Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
We're not just a thermometer recording and broadcasting popular opinion.
We aim to be a thermostat,
transforming the conversation about climate justice in our community. This is KBLA Talk 1580.
Hi, I'm Henry Winkler. My eyes are very important to me. My eyes connect me with everything I love. I loved my late father-in-law dearly. He always lit up a room, but his vision dimmed with age. He had age-related macular degeneration, or AMD. And since partnering with Apellis, I've learned there's an advanced form of dry AMD called geographic atrophy, or GA. His struggle with vision loss made me want to help others know about GA's warning signs. First tales, like fine print on price tags. Many have trouble seeing in the dark, making driving at night difficult. GA gets worse over time and cannot be reversed. If you think you have GA, don't wait. Treatments are available. Ask a retina specialist about FDA-approved treatments for GA and go to GAWon'tWait.com.
Sometimes I struggle to get to sleep. My body stopped for the day, but my mind is still running. So I take ZQuil.
ZQuil, the world's #1 sleep aid brand, has a range of non-habit-forming products to fit you and your family's needs. Invest in a great night's sleep for the best you tomorrow.
I'm awake and ready to take on anything.
Better days start with ZQuil nights. Explore our products at ZQuil.com. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
Without the ones like you, who work tirelessly to keep things running, everything would suddenly stop. Hospitals, factories, schools, and power plants, they all depend on you. No matter the weather, emergency, or time of day, you're the ones who get it done. At Grainger, we're here for you with professional-grade industrial supplies. Count on real-time product availability and fast delivery. Call, clickgrainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Smart talk for curious people just like you. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
You are indeed. I'm glad about it. Pleased to have in studio now. First of all, we thank Representative Kim for that conversation. Look forward. I hope you can pull this off, man. It'd be nice to see a Korean and an African-American, representing a particular state in this country. The Senate needs some color in it. And so I wish Representative Kim all the best in his campaign. From that to this, Yamonte Cooper is our guest, and he's live in studio. He's an author and psychotherapist, and has written a book called Black Men and Racial Trauma, Impacts, Disparities, and Interventions, and I'm honored to have him on this program. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
It's good to have you in studio, and I look forward to these a few moments that we have here. Let me start with this. You have researched and examined a subject that is not well researched. Don't spend a lot of time in this country talking about black male trauma. Not naive in asking this, but why is that?
I believe because the absence of black men, the study of their quotidian existence is normalized. So it's normalized to not really have any resources to have any empirical, robust research on black males.
Let me go a little deeper. Why is there such disinterest in the subject matter?
Because the hatred of black males is normalized. And so because the hatred is normalized, you can turn a blind eye, you can not invest in learning about this population.
The research that you do is centered around what exactly?
Around these various mechanisms that cause what I call racial trauma for black men. And so I look at not pathological diagnoses, but more so situational, contextual experiences that cause an injury, an emotional injury, if you will, that can include either what is called intrusion, where you have uninvited memories and thoughts that are emotionally dysregulating, or that there's also hyperarousal, where a person's nervous system doesn't shut off from being in a fight, flight, or a freeze response, as well as numbing to avoid feeling, as well as avoiding any reminders of the traumatic events.
So for most black men, I know there's no singular answer to this, but across the board, what does your research tell you or suggest to you about the source of most of the trauma that black men are wrestling with? What's the source? Or sources?
The sources are intentional targeting of black men for downward economic mobility, as well as premature mortality, death and dying. And so I talk about the health disparities, the intentional structuring of black men's lives, as well as the economic deprivation, as well as carceral state mechanisms that are intentional.
When you say the intentional structuring of black male lives, break that down for us, those of us who are not academics. When you say intentional structuring, you mean what?
So basically preventing black men from being in educational institutions, from having economic mobility to take care of their families, to take care of themselves. So a complete locking them out so that they don't have access to resources to take care of their families and their communities.
So you say prevent, I take from that you mean that this is deliberate.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not happenstance.
Yeah. And the data to underscore that particular point, again, nobody's naive here, but the data to underscore that point, that it is in fact deliberate and intentional, it is a prevention rather than a happenstance. You point us to what to prove that point?
Numerous examples and empirical research, but my work is grounded in social dominance theory, and social dominance theory looks at a dominant group that makes sure that it maintains dominance and numerical majority as a result of surplus resources. And the outgroup men, racialized men, black men in this example, are specifically targeted because they're considered a threat to the futurity of the dominant in-group. And so what that looks like is preventing the racialized outgroup men, black men specifically, from having access to resources because they're seen as a threat to the dominant in-group.
I don't know that I've ever asked anybody this particular question, but you'd be the right person to ask. So let me pose it. What in fact is so threatening? I don't mean fictionally. I mean in reality. What is so threatening about black men? Why are we such a threat to people?
Well, part of it is a constructing black men as a threat right after emancipation. Mm-hmm. As a result of, with the attempt to maintain dominance. So creating delusions around black men being this imposing non-entity that people are supposed to fear, that became part of people's unconscious, if you will, and embodied. And so part of it is this, they're viewed as a threat to the future of this in-group. And so there is prevention of this threat, and black men are intentionally targeted as a result. But it's been constructed, and you can see this construction specifically when it came to emancipation. Immediately constructing black men as rapists of white women, immediately constructing black men as threats to the dominant in-group. And you can also see this even during enslavement as well, as how black enslaved males were treated differently than black enslaved females.
His book is called Black Men and Racial Trauma, Impacts, Disparities, and Interventions. We've talked a bit now about the disparities in the time that we have. I want to talk about the impacts, but I want to preface it with this. Just reading last night some data in preparation for our conversation, Yamonte, and according to the CDC, the rate of suicide among black men and boys is accelerating faster than any other group in this country. No breaking news there. I've known that for quite some time, but I wanted to just double-check my facts last night to make sure nothing had changed. Sadly, regrettably, nothing has changed. That fact is still true, that suicide among black men and boys is accelerating faster than any other group in this country. That raises two questions. I want to talk broadly about the impacts of this trauma on black men. And secondly, if black men are so threatening, if we're these big black bucks, if we're all that, if we are just so masculine and so strong, why are we killing ourselves? Some serious questions for a serious guest. Yamonte Cooper, author of the book Black Men and Racial Trauma, will address those questions when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Hope, agency, dignity. This is Tavis Smiley.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication.
Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
I have diabetes. I'm at risk for pneumococcal pneumonia.
I have asthma. I'm at risk, too.
If you're 19 or older with chronic conditions like asthma, diabetes, COPD, or heart disease, or are 65 or older, you are at increased risk for pneumococcal pneumonia. Ask your doctor or pharmacist about Prevnar 20, pneumococcal 20-valent conjugate vaccine, a Pfizer vaccine that can help protect you against pneumococcal pneumonia in just one dose. Even if you've already been vaccinated with other pneumonia vaccines, Prevnar 20 may help provide added protection. Prevnar 20 is approved for adults to help prevent infections from 20 strains of the bacteria that cause pneumococcal pneumonia. Continued approval may depend on a supportive study. Don't get Prevnar 20 if you've had a severe allergic reaction to the vaccine or its ingredients. Adults with weakened immune systems may have a lower response to the vaccine. Side effects include pain and swelling at the injection site, fatigue, headache, muscle, and joint pain. For full prescribing information, please call 1-855-213-2138 or visit Prevnar20.com.
KBLA Talk 1580 is the fastest growing talk radio station in Southern California, home to 50,000 watts and an audience reach of 12 million listeners. KBLA Talk 1580 is a pioneer for black audio content, including our groundbreaking $2 million climate justice campaign and the most loyal, influential audience. According to an independent research study by the polling firm Aviterus, for the second consecutive year, KBLA Talk 1580 is the most trustworthy, reliable, and credible news source for black audiences and beyond in Southern California. Let KBLA Talk 1580 are specifically tailored to connect with your ideal target audience. We leverage audio, podcasts, streaming, digital, social media, and local activations to get your message out to the black community. Get in touch with our advertising team today at advertising@KBLA1580.com. That's advertising at KBLA1580.com. KBLA 1580. We've got your black. Let's get back to more Tavis Smiley right now.
More of Yamonte Cooper right now, author of the new book, Black Men and Racial Trauma, Impacts, Disparities, and Interventions. Not enough of these conversations about the plight of black men, and so pleased to have him in studio for these remaining moments. So the suicide rate is rising fastest in this country amongst black men and black boys. One, why do you think that is? And number two, if we're so all that, if we're so threatening, how do you juxtapose those two facts?
Yes. So, yes, the suicide rate is highest among black males, and it's increasing, and the research is showing that it's increasing because of anti-blackness, anti-black misandry that's targeted toward black men. The language that is used is racial microaggressions, which often are not micro, but just aggressions. And so that's a big part of what has the suicide rate of black males being so high.
Mm-hmm. Broadly speaking, what are the impacts of the racial trauma that black men have to navigate every day?
The impacts are premature mortality. The impacts are John Henryism, working really hard to try to transcend your experiences, and it doesn't work. The impacts are internalizing the condemnation or degradation as if something is wrong with you. But also, to answer your question, if we're so threatening, it's not about a reality, it's about a projection and a delusion to make sure that the black population does not gain any numerical numbers that could be potentially threatening. And so part of the process is, when you mention masculinity, is to masculinize out groups. And so when you see how black women are masculinized similar to white men, and then black men are masculinized, that's off the charts, and it's part of a dehumanization process, which is a precursor to genocide. And so it can be argued, and social dominance theory says says is that the out-group men are targeted for a low-level warfare. And so we can look at the history of black people and black men specifically in the U.S., and we can make a strong argument that they have been targeted for low-level warfare, for dehumanization, and even genocide.
You mentioned a moment ago the ways in which black men internalize this racial trauma. We internalize this pushback that we get oftentimes from the broader society. I want to talk about that, but first, why are we so susceptible to that in the first place? It's one thing for them to deny you resources and to John Henry you and all the things that you said earlier. It's another thing to be susceptible to that, to internalize that. Talk to me about that part.
A couple of things. Well, one is I really break away from some of the other theorists who talk about racial trauma, that we're walking around being a traumatized, broken population. I don't subscribe to that idea. When these experiences are internalized, then you have premature mortality, you have this sense of blaming yourself for your conditions and not having the ability to look at structural and systemic arrangements. And so we're not superhuman, even if we've internalized those ideas. So if you, being a group that has been targeted for over 400 years, it's difficult to come out of all of that without internalizing all of these messages and these structural arrangements.
Our remaining moments with the author of the book, Black Men and Racial Trauma, Impacts, Disparities, and Interventions, Yamonte Cooper on Tavis Smiley.
What's your quarrel with the world? You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 believes in community empowerment. LA's 99 neighborhood councils form the grassroots level of the Los Angeles city government. The system was created to connect LA's diverse communities to City Hall. While neighborhood council board members are volunteers, they are also public officials elected to office by the members of their community. Neighborhood councils advocate on issues like homelessness, housing, land use, emergency preparedness, public safety, parks, transportation, and sustainability. They also provide local expertise on the delivery of city services to their various communities. Neighborhood councils are open to participation by anyone who is a part of the fabric of daily life in said community. This includes those who live, work, or own property or a business. If you are interested in stepping up to join your local neighborhood council, visit www.empowerla.org. That's empowerla.org. It's time to think globally, but act locally. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Watch out! You got me! The galaxy is safe once again.
In the pretend universe, kids play with pretend guns. In the real world, it's up to us to make sure they don't get their hands on a real gun. If you have a gun in the house, keep it locked, unloaded, and stored separately from ammunition. Safe gun storage saves lives. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. That's endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by End Family Fire, Brady, and the Ad Council.
Eggs are a staple in our diet, and there's only one egg with more delicious farm-fresh taste plus superior nutrition. Eggland's Best. With more vitamins, including 6 times more vitamin D and 10 times more vitamin E, plus 25% less saturated fat than ordinary eggs. Available in so many delicious varieties. Classic, cage-free, and organic. Eggland's Best. Better taste.
More of Tavis Smiley coming your way right now.
More of Yamonte Cooper coming your way right now. The 4.5 minutes I have left. Once again, his book is called Black Men and Racial Trauma, Impacts, Disparities, and Interventions. You suggested earlier that in some ways your approach, your model, your frame is different from other researchers. Tell me quickly more about the distinct nature of your model.
Yeah, so I present different theories that I support by research, but the racial trauma theory that I present is an integrated model of racial trauma where it's a psychological model as well as a sociological model and epidemiological model. So I'm looking at what is considered race-based stress, that's a psychological model, and taking in the sociological model of racial trauma that looks at collective identity and how an identity was informed based on specific events, as well as an epidemiological model that looks at how warfare and being targeted affects a group's health and ways of situating themselves in the world.
Speaking of being targeted, you argue in your work and in your research in this text, Black Men and Racial Trauma, the name of the book once again, you argue unapologetically and pretty fiercely and forcefully that white men have targeted black men to stunt the growth of the black race. That is a damning indictment. I assume you stand by it.
I do, white men and white women.
Yeah.
They operate together.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the end game is ultimately to stunt the growth of the race?
Of the population, and to maintain numerical majority and to maintain power and control of the resources, of the surplus resources.
Mm-hmm. You also talk in the book about what you call plantation politics. Unpack that for me.
Yes, I speak about how black populations, whether it's black immigrant populations or people who identify as biracial, or black folks who are in high places, how they're used and willing participants in the control of black working class people or the black poor.
So your argument is that these black faces in high places are overrated?
Absolutely, and they're just mechanisms of control and dominance.
What about I'm just pushing back for the sake of argument here. What about the fact that that when you suggested earlier that we lack resources, when you have black people who are empowered, have access to those resources and can then deliver them to the rest of us, that's a good thing. So that we shouldn't deride unfairly or necessarily these black faces in high places.
Often, though, they're not about collective uplift. They're about self-interest. So you can weed out if they're about collective interest or if they're about self-interest. And often they'll talk the talk, but if you watch their actions, they're not about collective interest, especially when it comes to the black poor or the black working class.
Mm-hmm. To your point earlier about, and I'm still noodling on this notion that all of this is designed, this targeting of black men and targeting of black women is designed to stunt the growth of the black race. How do you respond to people who are saying, Yamonte, I was with you until you start acting like, you're seeing boogeymen?
Right.
And women.
Right. But I support what I'm speaking about with research. And what if what I'm saying is true? What would that mean? And what would people would black people specifically show up differently? I think a lot of people are comfortable with their lives and they don't really want to face the truth of what we are up against.
Yeah. In the 90 seconds I have left, talk to me about the last part of the subtitle of your book, Interventions. The book is called Black Men and Racial Trauma, Impacts, Disparities, and Interventions. Talk to me quickly about how we intervene, how we can help black men to stop internalizing this trauma.
Well, I talk about macro and micro intervention. So the macro is that we definitely need to have reparations for black people who descend from U.S. enslavement that will take us out of a bottom caste status. That has to happen. Otherwise, everything else is just talk, and it's not collective uplift. And then I go into micro interventions. And so micro interventions would be group work, therapy work, would be racial realism, Derek Bell's conceptualization that comes out of critical race theory of what a big part of this conversation is really looking at how this is operating and how black people are targeted intentionally without it being obscured with distractions.
His name is Yamonte Cooper. The book is called Black Men and Racial Trauma, Impacts, Disparities, and Interventions. I close where I began. Not enough research has been done in this arena, and I'm grateful to anybody doing the research about the drama and the trauma and the journey of black men. And so we thank Yamonte Cooper for his work and for his witness. Good to have you on this program, sir.
Thank you for having me.
All the best to you. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
Thank you for joining us, everyone. I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Donald Trump's hush money trial is in recess until Thursday after some salacious testimony from adult film star Stormy Daniels. Daniels took the stand Tuesday and went into detail about her alleged sexual encounter with Trump, leading the judge to scold the prosecution about her degree of detail. Trump is accused of falsifying business records tied to paying Daniels to stay quiet about an candidate in the race to become the next governor. She's running against Attorney General Bob Berger.